All right, so we'll go ahead and get ready. Sorry I shouted into the microphone before. I'm used to teaching where I don't have a microphone and shouting is just kind of feels natural. So on behalf of everyone involved with the Dairy Innovation Hub at Platteville, Madison, and River Falls, we want to thank you for spending your day with us, both in person and online. Remember, if you have any questions online, please put them in the chat, and as we go through, there's also the microphone as well. When the idea of the Dairy Innovation Hub was first imagined, dairy was in a downturn. Our leaders and legislative champions wanted to do something big to help. Research and innovation at key universities plays a big role in this story. To this end, we want to talk to 3 of our legislative champions and local Southwest Wisconsin state leaders and reflect on the last 4 years, look to the future, and talk about this unique 3-way collaboration. I'd like to welcome Chad Zuleger, who will moderate our closing session here with an exciting group of state leaders. Chad is the Director of Government Affairs at the Dairy Business Association. DBA is a nonprofit organization of Wisconsin dairy farmers, milk processors, and business partners who work together to boost the state's dairy community. Chad played a pivotal role throughout the legislative process that helped to create the hub. Please join me in welcoming Chad to introduce the panel discussion.
Thank you, Tara. It's a privilege to be with you all today, and it's always nice to get out of Madison and away from the Capitol, and especially on such a nice day. It's been a great day of programming, really superb programming today. I want to thank Chancellor Ivetovich and her team at UW-Platteville for hosting the summit today, Dr. Heather White for all your work to lead and to promote the Dairy Innovation Hub around the state and well beyond, and my former colleague at DBA, Maria Wolt, who keeps the day-to-day operations going with the hub. And thank you to all of you for being here today to support and learn more about where the Dairy Innovation Hub, or what the Dairy Innovation Hub has to offer. As Tara said, I'm Chad Zuleger, Director of Government Affairs for the Dairy Business Association. One of the ways that we seek to grow and advance the dairy industry in the state of Wisconsin is through research. I'm looking forward to our panel discussion today. Many of you know Senator Howard Marklein, Representative Travis Tranel, and Representative Dave Considine. I'll get to their introductions in just a minute, but I want to briefly give a background of the Dairy Innovation Hub, where it started, how it came to be, and share with you just kind of what prompted discussion about creating a Dairy Innovation Hub in the first place. The history of the hub is something that truly demonstrates partnership and collaboration, something we've heard a lot about today. We hear a lot about government gridlock and how government officials cannot work together. But the Dairy Hub is an example of something that really worked and found support not just in the GOP-controlled legislature and Democrat administration, but really brought people together from around the state in support of a common goal, to ensure that Wisconsin remains in the forefront of dairy research and improvement, and that we continue to build on our over 180-year dairy heritage. As you might recall, the idea of the Dairy Innovation Hub came about through the work of the Dairy Task Force 2.0, initiated during the Walker administration in 2018. It was envisioned as a collaboration between DATCAP, the UW system, and industry stakeholders. Their aim to ensure that Wisconsin dairy remains viable and profitable while enhancing our legacy as a dairy state. That group traveled the state, receiving input from farmers and dairy partners. The final report of the Dairy Task Force 2.0 was issued in June of 2019 with 82 approved recommendations. A Dairy Innovation Hub was the number 2 recommendation coming out of that report. So today I'm joined by 3 champions who ushered that number 2 recommendation through the legislature and helped make it a reality today. Senator Howard Marklein represents the 17th Senate District from Spring Green. He was first elected to the State Assembly in 2010 and then to the Senate in 2014. He has served as Senate Agriculture Committee Chairman and currently serves as a Senate co-chair of the state's Budget Writing Joint Finance Committee. Representative Travis Tranel represents the 49th Assembly District and is from Cuba City. He is the current chairman of the Assembly Agriculture Committee and is himself a dairy farmer and small businessman. Representative Dave Considine represents the 81st Assembly District and resides in D-Baraboo. Representative Considine has served in the State Assembly since 2014 and is the ranking minority member of the Agriculture Committee. Dave is a former goat farmer, having served as president of the Wisconsin Dairy Goat Association and a special education teacher. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. Welcome to UW Platteville, and let's get started. We're going to talk for a little bit, have some Q&A, and then any questions will be addressed at the end of the session. So please enjoy, write your questions down, and we'll hope to hear from you at the end. So gentlemen, heard a lot about collaboration, partnership throughout today's session. How important was the three-way collaboration between Madison, Platteville, and River Falls back in 2019 when you championed the Dairy Innovation Hub legislation? And just to refresh your memory, it was Assembly Bill 207, Senate Bill 186. I know we throw a lot of numbers around, but I hope that jogs your memory. And I'll open it up to anybody that would like to talk about it. Senator Marklein, you were an author. Representative Tranel, you were an author as well. Love to hear your perspectives from your individual caucuses and how you shared the message of the hub, and just kind of what your initial thoughts were in bringing the legislation forward.
Well, sure. I think first I just want to start by saying good afternoon to everybody. They always put us after lunch, I think, because people are ready for a nap, so we'll just take you the rest of the way. But I think that most good bills that come out of the legislature and most good ideas come from other people. And the Dairy Hub is a perfect example of that. And so the task force obviously came up with the idea, and then the three of us and our colleagues thought it was an excellent idea, and it was something that we were more than willing and happy to champion. But the fact that it was proposed as a collaboration between River Falls, Platteville, and Madison, I think was super, super important, because it enabled us to go to our colleagues from all across the state and tell them that it would have a more direct impact on their specific area. And I also think it's important because everybody recognizes and acknowledges that we have a wealth of talent at UW-Madison, but we also have so much talent at all of our outstate institutions. And I think the idea of the hub was really attractive to people because it gave us an opportunity to shine a light on some of the work that's getting done at those other campuses. And I think that was hugely important.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here to speak with you. I think the thing that I thought was most intriguing about the idea of the three campuses is that they represent three fairly different areas of agriculture, for agriculture and soil types. And Wisconsin is abundant in those, and the research that might happen here in Platteville might be different than what might happen up in River Falls or in the Arlington Plains, which is some of the richest farmland in the state. So to me, that was very intriguing. Brings all of that together. And as an educator, I know that the best things happen in the classroom and in the field when we get those two areas together. And the closer that we can get our educational institutions to our farmers, the better off we're all going to be. Farms will do better and universities will do better. So those two things to me were really significant. Farmers, typically the ones that I know, they like to stay home. And they like to be around the animals and around the farm. They don't want to be traveling a long way to get research, to get all the things brought to them. And I think that's one of the greatest parts about the Wisconsin idea. But it's also a great part about this hub, because there is an institution that's doing premier dairy research work that's closer to them than having to come to just to Platteville, or having to come just to River Falls, or having to come just to Madison. I think it was a brilliant idea to formulate it this way, and it was an easy sell because of that. And what Travis said, it's easy to have more legislators get on when their local institution is benefiting.
Thank you. So just so you know, you are in my Senate district right now. So, and I have the most agriculturally dependent Senate district in the state of Wisconsin. I've got all kinds of ag crops, all kinds of meat and cranberries, the northern part of my district, and a lot of dairy farmers and a lot of dairy plants. I believe the best cheese in the state is produced in my district. So as far as the collaboration, I think it was essential for this to succeed. Politically, as was mentioned, I think anytime that you get different geographic areas that benefit from it. You're going to get buy-in from those local legislators, and you know, I mean, that's part of the deal. And fortunately, I was on the Joint Finance Committee, and this had to go through the Joint Finance Committee, and so I was able to have a front row seat advocating for the Dairy Innovation Hub. And I guess the other thing that, as a non-higher ed person, it's just refreshing to hear the collaboration that's, I think, is occurring between the three campuses. And I see some people out here that are on different campuses, and I know I've seen you together on a number of occasions talking about stuff. And again, I'm outside of higher ed, but sometimes there's I think we have silos, to use a agriculture term, with our campuses, okay? And you know, this was a great opportunity for us to work across campuses, and which is exciting. I just think that nobody's got a monopoly on on good ideas, and you know, it's good that we work, you know, closer together, and you know, it's also kind of neat for me. I represent this campus, but this isn't just about Platteville engineering folks getting involved, or agriculture getting involved with this project, right? We got engineering people involved. I mean, it's really cool to see, even on one campus, the cross-disciplinary communication that's going on. So that's exciting to hear too.
Thank you. And as I recall, this was the first legislative session in which we were splitting bills up. So this had both a legislative track, we had legislation, but also went through the budget writing process. And Senator Marklein, you were leader in there. This also came with a pretty hefty price tag at the beginning. And I recall visiting legislative offices, talking about and advocating for the Dairy Innovation Hub. Initially, the enabling legislation called for $8.8 million, and that was $1 million in the first year for setup and organization, initial hirings, and then $7.8 million going forward for general operations. Was a financial hurdle something that had to be overcome, or were people pretty on board and in agreement with the need for this, and therefore it got support throughout the legislature, or were you having individual conversations within your own caucuses about that?
Well, I can speak for our caucus in the Assembly, the Republican caucus anyway. I think the public would be surprised to know that our biennial budgets are pushing $100 billion. In our caucus, any amount of money that you want to spend is scrutinized quite heavily, even if it's $250,000. So if you come with a proposal and say, you know, I want to spend 7 or 8 million, that gets looked at quite intently. And so obviously we needed to have good answers for that. Thankfully, the agriculture industry in Wisconsin is a $100 billion industry, as you guys well know. Half of that roughly is dairy alone, so we're talking about a $50 billion economic impact every year. So I mean, we had the ammunition that we needed to convince our colleagues, but yeah, it was a heavy task.
Travis is right. I mean, I've said no to a lot less money than that.
He says no to my bills sometimes, if you can believe that.
Yeah, but we always pass the good ones, though. So
we're being recorded.
Yeah. You know, at 7.8 million ongoing, I think that it wasn't insignificant. So you know, we needed to make our pitch, and you know, that really occurs kind of on it. You know, first of all, it happens at the Joint Finance Committee level, because if it doesn't come out of Joint Finance in the budget, it probably isn't going to happen. So again, we were able to make the argument there. You know, I talked to every one of my colleagues on the Senate side, and then and Travis and others were talking on the Assembly, and one of the challenges that we have in the legislature is we don't have that many farmers or people with farm backgrounds anymore in the legislature, okay? And that's not a good thing. And so that means that the responsibility for advocating for agriculture rests with fewer and fewer of us. And fortunately, in the case of the Dairy Innovation Hub, we were able to convince people that it was important. And really, what we were selling it on was a concept. And I think the idea that, you know, Wisconsin, we want to be number one in dairy. You know, that's who we are. You know, so I think our colleagues kind of bought into that. You know, understood how important dairy is, and then but it was a concept. You know, and even for me, I was like, you know, so what am I going to get for $7.8 million a year? Right? I still ask that question. You know, I mean, seriously, and we have to be prepared in defending the investment that the Dairy Innovation Hub is making every year. We got to be able to answer that question into the future, because we're going to be asked again. So what am I getting for my $7.8 million a year?
For me, I think it wasn't as much of a sell that I had to make. It was the sell that the agriculture groups made. It was amazing. Frequently, Farmers Union, Farm Bureau, they'll come in on different sides of an issue. This dairy group will come in on that side, this dairy group will come in on another. The easiest part about this, really, and the part that I dug into and really liked, was the fact that every ag group said, this is a good idea, you need to be spending this money this way. And I think that's a good lesson in advocacy for all of us. Because when that happens at the state capitol, we all take notice of that, because that's pretty important. The other thing was, it was sold as a concept, as an idea, with almost a trial period, and we're going to look at this again in 2 years. And the program sold itself. It hasn't been fought with that much since. There might have been some controversy at first about, shall we spend this money? But the work that you all are doing, and that the Dairy Hub is doing, is selling this. It's not a big sell anymore, because it was a trial period, but almost immediately we could show this is producing results. And dairy farmers would come in and tell us that it was producing results. That's a big deal.
Excellent, thank you very much. With over 50 staff and faculty on board, 200 projects in the works, and 500 students engaged in research, curious as to what you think, and based on what you heard today, what does success, and we kind of touched on that in the previous question, but what does success look like in your mind for the Dairy Innovation Hub? Obviously, we want Wisconsin to remain the center of the dairy universe. The Dairy Innovation Hub really positions us well. People are really looking inward to Wisconsin for our research, but what would that look like to you? What does success mean to you in the Dairy Innovation Hub?
I'll start. To me, what we've heard from the dairy community is success. We need to continue hearing from them how much this means to them. The other part that I think is important is this whole concept embraces environmentalism as well as agriculture, and wants to blend those two things. We heard a presentation this morning on greenhouse emissions on a farm and analyzing that and what could be done to improve that. That's forward thinking, and that's what we all need to be thinking about to have dairy continue to be this huge industry in our state and continue to drive the economy of our state. And so that's a really important part of the concept, that we're looking at it from all sides. We're not saying dairy is perfect. We're not saying anything is perfect. What we're saying is, how can we help dairy make life better for all of us, whether it's in the products they produce, whether it's in the variety of products they produce, or whether it's in the environmental and climatological impact that it has on our state and our nation.
I would echo what Representative Considine says, but then I would also remind everybody that I'm a dairy farmer, and so sometimes I'm not always the most politically correct person on the stage. To me, success, I think that you guys have made a fantastic start. Starting from scratch and building what you've built is a great accomplishment, and I think we should recognize that. I think that we also need to recognize that I do rough math, so 4 years at 8 million, we're 30 million into this thing. And so if you do the math with roughly 6,000 producers left in the state, that's about $5,000 per producer that we've spent. And so to me, success would be when you go up to the average dairy farmer, not an advocacy group, not the cheesemakers. You go up to an average dairy farmer in the state of Wisconsin and you say, do you want your $5,000 or do you want the Dairy Innovation Hub? And when they say, you let that Dairy Innovation Hub alone, that is success. And with some of the research that we've seen today, if you get that stuff figured out, the farmers will recognize the value of that research and they'll say, leave the Dairy Innovation Hub alone, that's what we want. But until we get there, this program will get scrutinized every single budget cycle. I was trying to think of what I could relate it to. Senior care in Wisconsin is a very, very popular program. That's one you just don't mess with. When the Dairy Innovation Hub has reached that status, that's when I will say that it's a success. Right now, if I could offer one bit of constructive criticism, I've noticed that the individual campuses themselves are very excited about everything that's been accomplished. They're happy about the research, they're happy about who they've been able to hire. They're very upfront and honest that this program has transformed their campuses, and that's all great. But we did this to transform the dairy industry, not the 3 campuses, and I think we need to keep that in the back of our minds.
Well said. I'm looking at Andy Buttles. I'm like, you know, when our dairy farmers are, you know, telling us that it's valuable, you know, then we've achieved some level of success. You know, again, highly effective higher ed programs are connected directly to their industries. Okay, and you know, and that's essential, you know, with the Dairy Innovation Hub, to stay connected and stuff. And, you know, and I've been on a number of farm tours and that sort of thing with Tara Montgomery. And it's so cool to have all the dairy farmers, they know her, you know? That says a lot about her and about the program here and stuff. So anyway, so again, just to emphasize what's been said earlier about the farmers, they're the ones that we're going to hear about, either good or bad, about the program, and you know. So and also, and I gave this advice when the program first started, and I talked a little bit about early wins. Some of this research is long term. It's going to take years and years. Who knows how long it's going to take until we know if it's successful or not, okay? And most people are impatient people, you know? We invest $8 million, what did I get? So we need short-term wins too, you know, and that's like key, I think, for the Dairy Innovation Hub. You know, we can be working on some of the long-term projects that may take a long period of time to prove themselves, but we need to, you know, I use a sports analogy, you know, sometimes you have to schedule some non-conference games up front just to get a couple wins and let people know what the heck you're doing. And I think we've got to do that a little bit here with the Dairy Innovation Hub.
Excellent answers, gentlemen. Appreciate that. Dairy industry is continually under pressure, whether it be from environmental standpoints, whether it be from cost of production, input costs, fuel costs, production, processing capacity. Dairy Innovation Hub has 4 main priority areas: steward land and water resources, enrich human health and nutrition, ensure animal health and welfare, grow farm, businesses, and communities. Along the veins, Representative Tranel, I think you already kind of dove into this question a little bit, but what suggestions do you have that would make the hub better and more responsive to the farmers in the field based on those 4 priority areas?
Yeah, thank you. So again, in addition to what I've already said, there are so many things that are going to affect agriculture that as a farmer, we're kind of guilty of glossing over. Environment, carbon offsetting, carbon insetting, all of that stuff, there's going to be tremendous opportunity for all of agriculture, including the dairy industry, moving forward. Farmers sometimes are, not sometimes, all the time, they are so busy dealing with the day-to-day tasks on their farms that they don't necessarily have the time or the energy, honestly, to focus on some of these issues. And if the Dairy Innovation Hub can help make some of these very, very complex topics easier to digest and easier to understand, I think that would be very helpful for agriculture moving forward. We just heard a bill in my committee. It has to do with, it's called a carbon calculator. And as soon as you say the word carbon and calculator, most farmers kind of gloss over and don't even really understand what you're talking about. But at that committee, somebody made the analogy to think of it like Kelley Blue Book. And everybody is pretty familiar with Kelley Blue Book. You type in what kind of car you have, how many miles, what year it is, and it spits out a value. Farmers are being asked to implement all of these projects. They don't really know why. They're not really sure what the value of what they're doing is. It would be very nice to have something like a Kelley Blue Book for everything that we're being asked to do environmentally. If the Dairy Innovation Hub can start coming up with and working on things like that, I think it would be very, very helpful for farmers.
I think about the rural life aspect of that question, and we didn't hear a whole lot about it here today. And perhaps that's something we need to explore, I think, as we encourage smaller agriculture as well as larger agriculture. That will help. But most farmers don't. Did it die? No, it didn't. Okay. Most farmers don't want to live in a vacuum, don't want to live all by themselves. So we need to find a way to also revitalize our smaller rural communities. I'm not sure how that's done. I'm not sure how that applies, but I think that's a facet that perhaps Dairy Hub could get involved in and might help the quality of life in our communities and have more young people want to stay in our communities.
So I think the whole sustainability issue is important, and when people think about sustainability, that can mean a lot of different things. That includes economic, because I'll tell you what, I was raised on a dairy farm, and when things are bad, my dad's been dead for many years now, but don't bother him about talking about some esoteric issue, when he's trying to keep his head above water and stuff. So, finances are important, to our farmers, and as far as keeping our rural landscapes, I mean, it's got to be economically viable. This idea of just, this was a number of years ago. I was meeting with some people in Dodgeville, a former secretary of some agency, and she said, it's too bad we don't have like 40 cows grazing, dairy cows grazing up on the hill. And I said, how many cows did you milk this morning? And she said, none. We had to sell the cows. And I said, how come? She goes, you can't make any money at 40 cows. I said, well, yeah, ultimately, the economics have to be there. It just, otherwise we're kidding ourselves. There's got to be money in agriculture, and so anyway, that's all I got.
Well, gentlemen, I'm receiving the 5-minute warning, so I just want to be really quick and make sure that we get a question. And I think everybody had an opportunity to listen to some of these presentations and programming this morning. And I just wanted to ask on the way out, what have you heard today that may have piqued your interest or excited you about the Dairy Innovation Hub? Was there a specific project or poster going on or anything that piqued your interest or that you'd like to see more about, learn more about?
So the ones that interest me are the tangible ones, and the ones that I think when farmers are flipping through Ag Review or Horde's Dairyman or the Platteville Journal, they'll look at that and say, that's kind of a cool idea. I can relate to that. So I came in very interested in the collars and the rotational grazing, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. I also, as a farmer, very well aware of what it costs to establish a first-year alfalfa field. So establishing alfalfa with corn, I thought that was very interesting. To me, those are perfect examples of where we should, and it is appropriate to use taxpayer dollars to research some of this stuff, because maybe Andy wants to try it on his farm, but I don't want to try it on mine until you guys tell me it's going to work.
I really liked, I think one of the things that's going to help us, and Senator Marklein talked about it, is making it economically viable. And the cost of production one I thought was really interesting, and the way that moved around and different sizes of herds and all those things. It looked like we can be economically viable with a fairly small herd, just depending on how we do it, and vice versa. That one was very interesting. And and I already mentioned the one about greenhouse gas mapping, but the biochar, there are several of those back there, and how that might influence the environment. And I was also thinking, as I looked at those, how that might be a small business for one of our small local communities to start producing biochar for all those things. So that was another interesting thing, and I know is a fairly new thing that I think could be really cool.
I didn't catch all the presentations this morning, but I was impressed with the breadth of them. And you don't want me coming up with the ideas, the research projects. You're a lot smarter than I am. Okay, you as researchers need to be pushing the envelope and coming up with ideas that might work, and then, as Travis said, and then being able to connect that research at high level, sophisticated research. I was looking at that chemistry model there, and I didn't understand any of it, but synthesize that down into something that, here, farmer, here's why this is going to work. I mean, that to me, that's pretty exciting.
Great, thank you. Want to make sure we have got some time for questions. I will turn it back to, who am I turning it back to? Maria?
Thanks, Chad. So we've got some time for Q&A. We've got a microphone there. Anyone have any questions for our panel?
I always love this, because if we go to like a kindergarten class, they'll line up and ask questions for hours, and the older the audience gets, the fewer questions. It's wonderful.
If you don't have comments on this, if you have other ideas for us as legislators, this is a great time to share that as well. You don't always get your legislators' ear this quickly and this easily.
Well, I just really want to thank Representative Tranel, Representative Considine, and Senator Marklein for being here today, for being legislative champions of the Dairy Innovation Hub, and for all they do at the state capitol to make sure that dairy remains at the center of what they're doing, and how they recognize the importance of dairy farming, our dairy farmers, our dairy community in the state budget. With a nearly $50 billion a year industry on the line, they really are forward thinking in producing legislation that would allow a Dairy Innovation Hub to work around different campuses, intercampus, and just continue to grow dairy and move dairy forward. So please help join me in thanking our panel today.